Thanks so much, Dorinda. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners, like the people, pay respects to elders past and present, and acknowledge that we are on stolen land, and just acknowledge how amazing it is to be part of a party that is taking the fight for treaty up to this election, and we're going to have it as one of its key campaign issues, because this country that we call Australia was founded on violence and dispossession, and generally we do a pretty bad job of acknowledging that in this country, and for so long as we continue to refuse to tell the truth about our history, we're going to be repeating it, and we're going to be repeating the violence and dispossession for First Nations people. And only once we've told the truth about that violence and dispossession, and we've then gone through that process of justice and healing, then we can reach a treaty with our First Nations people. And it is so incredible, can I say, to be part of a party room that has 2 out of 10, 20% of its members being First Nations women, who are helping us lead, who are leading that fight, and we are fighting side by side for that fight for justice and for recognition. But can I also say, just generally, it is great to be in Perth. Thank you. Thank you for finally letting us in. And, coming over and having a visit with Dorinda, like, it's not been for want of trying. We've just been waiting and waiting and waiting for the opportunity to be able to do it. And when we were on the flight today and they said your flight's delayed, it's like, no, come on, let us in. So thank you all for waiting around. I know there's been a bit of reshuffling of this evening. So thanks for being patient and bearing with us and being part of this to make it happen, because we've learned over the last little while what you've known up here close hand, which is just how crucial it is to have Dorinda in the Parliament, and how absolutely vital it is going to be to make sure she's returned. And we have seen firsthand her willingness to take the fight up to the big gas and resource corporations on behalf of the Greens, so she's got the portfolio responsibility for that for us, in such a crucial area for us at this election. And she's got them on the run. And in the short time that she's been there, seeing what she's been able to achieve just makes me filled with absolute determination. If there's one thing we've got to do this election, it's re-elect her. Like, we absolutely have to re-elect her. And we've got to do it because this is one of the most critical elections that we've faced for a very, very long time. And I want to tell you why, and why it's so crucial to have the Greens there. But before we go into that, it's worth just marking that we are less than 100 days from the election. We may even be less than 90 or 80 days from the election, which means we are less than 100 days from talking about former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. I just want you to think about how close we are to turfing the Liberals out, this rotten climate-denying government that has turbocharged inequality, that even now, in the dying days of its government, thinks it's more important to make us sit till 5 a.m. to pass legislation that increases discrimination and hate, rather than introducing a federal ICAC or tackling the climate crisis. And things are potentially even going to get worse between now and the election as they desperately try to hang on to power. But we are this close from being part of the movement that is sweeping the country, that is saying it is time to turf this rotten mob out. And we've got to do it because we are facing a climate crisis, and you've just been living through heat waves and bushfires here, you know what it's like. We are facing a climate crisis, and we have been told time and time and time again that we've got a short window left to turn the ship around. But we've got a government who thinks the answer to dealing with the COVID recession and the climate crisis is to build new gas pipelines and open up new gas fields, right? That's what they think is the answer to the climate crisis, is to pour more petrol onto the fire. And there comes a time when we're not only dealing with that climate crisis, but we've got an inequality crisis as well, where people know how hard it is now to find a place to live. I mean, buying, forget about buying, even renting in some places now is getting out of reach. And you can do all the right things that they ask you to do and go and finish your school and finish your study and go to TAFE or go to university and even be in a two-income couple household earning a decent wage and be unable to get a house, in part because you probably got the debt the size of a small mortgage from the study because they got rid of free education and pulled up the ladder behind them after all the politicians in Parliament had previously got it for themselves. We're facing an inequality crisis where it is becoming harder and harder for people to just make ends meet, and they're already now talking about inflation growing and getting out of control. But meanwhile, during the pandemic, like less so here perhaps in WA than in the rest of the country, but still the effects were felt. Across the whole country, 1 million people lost their incomes during the pandemic, but billionaires increased their wealth in this country faster than billionaires did in any other country in the world, right? Which, when you think about how quickly Amazon would have grown during the pandemic, or Bill Gates, that's saying something. And the mining billionaires, including mining billionaires right here, doubled their wealth during the pandemic. Like, while everyone else was doing it tough and got lifted out of poverty for a little while when they lifted JobSeeker above the poverty line, but have now been plunged back into it. They're doing it like they have been making out like bandits while everyone else is doing it tough. But what we've also found out is that it is kind of often the same to corporations and billionaires that are causing the climate crisis that are also behind the inequality crisis as well. And WA kind of is home to where a lot of those things are being played out at the moment. And we've got to get rid of the Morrison government because currently when the Scarborough gas field was approved, which is going to be the most polluting project in Australia. If you thought Adani was bad, Scarborough is worse. It's the equivalent of 15 coal-fired power stations a year. Like, this country's worth of pollution stuck in the ground there that has to stay there. Scott Morrison said